Hey, Tanya, you suck. What is this, Rednecks on Ice? An ice capade?
You know what?
Hey.
You wanted to... Hey.
Oh, here she comes.
I, Tanya.
Why can't I just make the eggs?
Because you take too long, you make a big mess, and I have to clean the whole thing up.
Ladybird.
The nickel is for the colonial ships. Closest any of them or any of us is gonna get to that grand life off-world.
Blade Runner 2049. These three movies all had one thing in common. They were all masterpieces of some variety, and they were all among the best 10 films that 2017 had to offer. Today on the Magnus Harbinger, we are going to be counting them down from 10 to 1.
Welcome to the Magnus Harbinger. I am your host and galactic overlord, Jeff Turner. This show will be pretty freewheeling. We'll segue from a movie I like to an album I like and maybe some interviews further down the line. Who knows? This is anarchy. We'll have to take this ride together. I love movies, and I love lists. And I love lists about movies because they offer a finality. I can figure out which movie is the best of its year, which movie is the best of all time, and I can do it pretty quickly. It's fast food criticism, and boy, is it fun to write. So here are my top 10 films of 2017. But first, before we get into the list, I wanted to go over some runners-up. First up is Logan.
Logan, what did you do? Charles, the world is not the same as it was. Mutants. They're gone now.
This is one superhero movie that I think will have staying power. And I usually get really frustrated at, say, the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it seems like cinematic sugar. It's in one ear and right out the other. It's air. I can't touch it. I can't feel it. They're empty movies. But Logan has some heft to it. Here, Jackman hits a note that feels refreshingly human, and when he's interacting with Patrick Stewart's Professor X, they feel like people. It is barely a superhero movie. It's a lot closer to a Western, and yet at the same time, it is one of the greatest superhero movies the genre has ever seen.
Logan, you still have time.
Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special.
I had a hard time processing it the first time I saw it. There's a lot going on, and even though this is a list of movies I like, I have no problem admitting potential flaws in the various films I highlight, so I'll start here. The Last Jedi is a very sloppy movie, and that's the fault of Rian Johnson's writing. Various elements are not conveyed to the audience very clearly. The closest thing I'd compare it to is probably David Lynch's Dune, where it definitely seems like more of a cult hit rather than what Star Wars has usually been. I kind of dig it. I think that you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and over. You've got to experiment a little, and with this Titanic brand that's been around for 30, 40 years, a lot of the stuff in it that has become iconic is starting to get familiar and stale. You've got to reinvent it and revamp it, and I was surprised by how emotional I got on the second viewing and how much more cohesive the viewing experience was. Like, a favorite scene of mine is when Luke reappears on Crate, and he has that wonderful interaction with Leia, brilliant performances by Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, and he hands her Han Solo's dice. I teared up, admittedly, and there are a lot of great little moments like that, and Adam Driver is steadily proving himself to be the most reliable actor of his generation, and I think Kylo Ren is the single most interesting and compelling character in this entire series. I keep my hopes measured for Episode 9.
But with that being said, I've seen The Last Jedi twice now, and I'll probably watch it a third or a fourth time. I think this one will get a lot of love from people over the years. I think people are going to cool on their opinions on it. I think more and more people are going to embrace it as the years go on. I think this one will hold up better than Force Awakens. I think it'll hold up better than Rogue One. I think it'll go down as one of the better Star Wars films.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
Many buttons? 2. And what style?
Tactical.
Mr. Wick, do enjoy your party.
How good to see you again so soon.
No more delay. Let's get into the list. Number 10. John Wick Chapter 2 is a hard movie to sell, in part because its appeal is so gendered. This is a movie made by stuntmen playing with action figures. It's a pastiche of films Schwarzenegger or Stallone might have starred in, mixed with elements from a 90s Hong Kong John Woo film.
We wanted to be an unapologetic artsy action film. We wanted to be a great, when Keanu and I and David sat down the first one, we wanted to make something a little different. We wanted to make it, you know, a good-looking genre film, because that's, I think, what we all really loved about action films in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, especially Asian or Hong Kong cinema, Japanese animation.
An integral piece to John Wick's success is Keanu Reeves' performance. Reeves has gotten a lot of flack over the course of his 30-year career, mostly because he's given some very bad performances and he's been in some very bad movies, but he is a master at one very specific thing. He knows how to sell you on something being cool. Take something totally silly and inane, like him firing his gun into the air in Point Break, or something like the trench coats in The Matrix, and his physicality complements him in these action scenes. He has a sort of lean figure to him.
Working?
Yeah. You?
Yeah. Good night.
Afraid so.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Able to move around like he's dancing, very nimble, and it's like watching an artist work. And like the trench coats and like the gun into the air, Reeves' job is to sell you on John Wick being cool. Because without an actor who is really good at that very specific thing, there's nothing to this character. And that's almost half the point. John Wick Chapter 2 is a great movie precisely because of the direction and the action scenes, but mostly because of Keanu Reeves' screen presence. He is an underrated genius, and I personally don't think he gets enough credit. Number 9.
In Detroit, a city of war. On the city's west side, a 150-block area is off limits to everybody. U.S. Army paratroopers, National Guardsmen, state and local police.
Catherine Bigelow's latest film, Detroit, is a credit to her resume. It's a masterpiece. It is tense, gross, provocative, emotional. It made me feel nauseous at the end, and the performances are just fantastic. And the movie's well over 2 hours, but it never feels it.
That's nice voice. Hey, all things considered, this is pretty good.
Thank you. I'll have my usual appliances.
Oh, you got any sugar?
Don't push your man.
It's another installment in what Bigelow has started with The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30 with a form of cinematic journalism. She took Detroit on shortly after the events in Ferguson, Missouri. The rawness from those riots shows, the emotion shows. This is a movie that, while it is a period piece, it is very of its time, but it's never in your face. It's a narrative first. It's an analysis of this city first. It's about these characters first, and the actors are front and center. There are a lot of newcomers here, and they're all surprisingly excellent, and they could have easily been very bad. The standouts have to be Will Poulter as the would-be villain. He's the police officer that holds up the 9 individuals at the Algiers Motel, and he is just despicable, but in a way that isn't cartoonish. It's a way that's very human, and that makes him all the more disturbing, which is riveting to me. The atmosphere is tight and strangulating, and Bigelow's directorial work on this movie is some of the best I've seen in years. When people finally acknowledge her as the great filmmaker that she is, they will look back on her career and see Detroit as a highlight.
Now let's not be stupid in this situation. You need to tell me where the gun is. I got all night, people. Tell me exactly what is going on here.
I need you to survive the night.
And I wanted to thank y'all for tuning into this session of the Magnus Harbinger. The music used today was from a group of trip-hop musicians found on YouTube. One is Jorge Sacco. You can find him on his SoundCloud page, and you can find him on YouTube. I strongly encourage you to check him out. Another is Costa MMA. Also can be found on YouTube. Also can be found on his SoundCloud page. Strongly recommended. Also featured is another artist by the name of Gabby Antibeats. They can also be found on YouTube. And the fourth artist is And the fourth artist goes by the name of Cracks. Also available on SoundCloud, also available on YouTube. Check all of these people out. And when you search royalty-free trip hop on YouTube, check out everyone. It's a real treasure trove. They are magnificent musicians. That does it for this session of the Magnus Harbinger. Tune in next time for more movies, music, and musings.